Hi there, it's Ian here, and you're watching Grumpy Opinions, the show where I'm going to tell you all about what I think of films, TV shows, games, and life in general. Let's get on with the show. Outlander is the Starz TV show based on the books by Diana Gabaldon. They tell the story of Claire and Jamie, lovers separated by time, now trying to find each other after 20 years, or 200, depending on how you look at it. Episode 5, Freedom and Whisky, finds us at Christmas time in Boston, where Claire's distracted mood is concerning her doctor pal Joe. But luckily, Claire's an amazing doctor, so it turns out that she was still on top form, even if she's distracted. But since Joe's not an idiot, she ends up telling him a little bit about the truth about Jamie, because he keeps, nagging and asking about it. And, he is one of her best friends. But while she's doing alright being distracted, Brianna's also distracted, and unlike Claire, it's causing her to fail at her studies at Harvard. See, not only is she in freefall about the revelations about her biological father being Jamie, a 17th century Highlander, she's now back in Boston to celebrate her first Christmas since her adopted dad Frank died. So, she's going through like his old stuff and getting really sad. She's kind of in a bad place, And into this mix, Roger decides to invite himself over to America for Christmas in the hope of, well, I was going to make a joke about Boston cream pie, but let's just not go there, okay? Anyway, Roger arrives just as Bree and Claire are going hammer and tongs in an argument about Bree quitting uni and wanting to move out. So anyway, Bree pops off to somewhere which is not entirely explained, and Roger's left catching up to Claire. Now, she knows that he's all about Brianna and she likes him, so that's okay. But it also turns out that he came over because he found a final clue about Jamie. See, he found a pamphlet with a snippet of Robert Burns' poetry on it, dated 20 years before Robert Burns ever wrote the poem that it's quoting. Now, Claire knows that that means it has to be Jamie because she used to say that poem to him, and it freaks Claire out completely because, she'd finally put the chance of finding Jamie and getting back together kind of out of her mind. I mean, maybe about 15 years too late if you ask me, but now she's terrified to leave Brianna alone, so Roger ends up heading off to bed a bit embarrassed, and Claire kind of ponders her pearls in a nightie that makes her look 90 years old. Anyway, the next day at work, Dr. Joe gets sent a skeleton of some woman from the Caribbean who died like a long time ago, but Claire's kind of weirdly knowledgeable about how she died and when, and it's all a bit strange, and even the music's a bit strange. It's almost like Claire's a bit clairvoyant. That was awful. Bree and Roger, on the other hand, are catching up, watching TV, drinking pop, and then later they're hanging out at Harvard, admiring all the architecture. See, it turns out that Bree kind of feels out of sync with the world, and she reckons it might be all like, the Jamie side of her that makes her that way. So they kind of talk about a bit about the nature of like who you are and what's going on in the world, and then the whole of them go off to a memorial award ceremony in honour of Frank, and Claire only goes and bumps into Candy or Sandy or Harlot or wherever her name is, and they end up sniping at each other a wee bit. But then it all gets a bit sad when Sandy points out that all she ever actually wanted was a chance just to be with Frank, and she never got that, and she kind of blames Claire for it. But it gets even more emotional as Brianna starts laying out her innermost fears about Frank maybe not loving her because she looked like Jamie, and that maybe Claire not really loving her because she was the reason that Claire had to leave the past. But Claire totally reassures her and tells her about Roger's discovery. But Claire's still not quite convinced that she needs to go back in time again. And it takes just another wee Christmas heart-to-heart between the mother and daughter. I mean, Roger must have gone out to the pictures or something. But Bree points out that she's a grown woman now, and that she needs to live her own life, and Claire kind of needs to go back to living her own. And a quick stop into Dr. Joe to ask if she still looks cute, and Claire's ready to head off to the past, with a few little Christmas gifts from Roger and Bree, that might be handy when going back in time, and a little bit of sewing to make a kind of handy time traveller's super coat with lots of pockets, and then a wee bit of hair dye, and she's ready to go off back to the past. And literally, she just goes, there's a bit of a hug, and then they head off. Roger and Bree don't even actually see her to the airport, which seems a bit, thoughtless and unkind. But anyway, to be honest, I think they're kind of just waiting for her to leave so they can play under the mistletoe all over the new house. Anyway, Claire ponders what she's doing in the taxi ride, and then suddenly, boom, we're back in the Royal Mile, back in 17 Oatcake, and luckily enough, a wee laddie wandering past knows exactly the print shop that she's looking for. So she wanders down the close, and there she finds it. And there's a big sign, and is that a Masonic symbol? I mean, does that mean Jamie's into the Illuminati now? What's going on? But she goes in, and she hears a familiar voice. And then they see each other, and gaze up into each other's eyes. And after 20 years, oh, Jamie just fell over. Uh-oh, what's going to happen now? So what did I think? Well, this episode's a real change in tack. I mean, we're almost entirely in the 1960s now, and this is a really good way to tie up Claire's story in this almost modern day. I mean, we got to see that all isn't quite so rosy as it might have been in the Randall house now that Frank's gone, and in a way I was actually surprised at how much his presence still kind of lingers over the house and over their lives. I also really liked that the story touched on some really simple human emotions this week. The fact that most characters got some kind of credible moment of relatable humanity. I mean, Bree was getting sad at spending Christmas without her dad, and she's the confused feelings that she's having about understanding these dynamics between her parents that she never actually saw when she was a kid because they kept them hidden. And Claire, she's having to choose between taking a gamble on maybe winning her happiness and getting back with Jamie, and then the possibility of her never seeing Brie again. I mean, as well as the fact that also things like her being concerned about her looks and like, will Jamie still find her attractive if she's got grey in her hair? I mean, it was really cute and really human. And also, that moment when Sandy met Claire. I mean, and it turns out Sandy's not really a monster or a temptress or anything like that. She's just a woman who fell in love with a man and then waited for years hoping on happiness that she wanted, only to have it snatched away at the last minute. And of course she blames Claire for it, because I mean, she can hardly blame Bree, and Frank's dead, and she's got to be hurting. And I thought that was a really interesting touch from the show writers, because it makes everybody just human and normal. And I think it helps ground the reality of everything quite emotionally. I think it also leaves like things in an interesting place with Bree and Roger, because I mean they're clearly going to become a couple now, and they actually have the means and time to do whatever they want, really. Since I mean they both effectively inherited all of their parents' worldly possessions and homes. So yeah, I really enjoyed a lot of things this week. But oh my, I had a few complaints. I mean, first off, why? Why did this episode actually happen? I mean, in terms of story, I don't feel like this episode needed to happen. I mean, I'm not saying that it didn't make any sense. I'm saying that it was unnecessary. Because as I said last week, I mean, I felt like Claire's giving up felt kind of disingenuous and rushed, and it seemed like they were doing it just for the story's sake to kind of, prolong things and stop her going back so fast. I mean, maybe they just didn't show the passage of time that well in that episode, but it felt like, they'd only been there a few days, and then out of nowhere, Claire was just like, I can't be bothered, let's get up and go home, vacation's finished. So, I mean, this week it felt like things were treading water a wee bit. I mean, simply just coming back to exactly the same place that we could have been in last week. I mean, think about this, honestly. I mean, imagine if Roger had found the pamphlet last week, and then Claire could have left and gone back in time, and then Bree could have just gone off to Boston and took Roger with her, and then boom, exactly the same result. I mean, I'm not saying that I didn't like how any of it played out this week, because I did. I thought a lot of the acting and the writing worked really well, but it felt like this episode was kind of just padding out the story unnecessarily. There was also one scene in this episode, one great walloping scene that just made no sense and came out of nowhere and didn't really seem to fit. I mean, can you guess what one it is? It was the one with the skeleton. Now, we don't know enough about Claire and Joe's work to know if it's normal for him to get delivered like a random bunch of bones. I mean, we don't know what he does. He's a doctor, a surgeon of some kind, so why is he being sent ancient bones? And then the scene just gets dropped out of nowhere, and Claire's all like, "Oh, she was murdered!" And like spooky music comes on, and it makes it all very bit silly. Now, clearly, it's some kind of setup for something later on. I mean, obviously. I mean, it's blatantly going to be something important to the story. I mean, the skeleton's going to be like a character or something like that. I mean, I hope it's not like Claire or something. And that would be weird, but I don't think they would do that. But otherwise, the scene just makes no sense. There's no reason for it to be in the episode, unless the whole series is about to turn into Claire being some kind of psychic superhero or, a paranormal forensic investigator or something like that. I also felt that Claire came off quite badly in this episode, as a person and a character. I mean, since this all really kind of started to make her seem like she's almost a bit of like a controlling tiger mum. I mean, now she has this whole blow up at Frank a few weeks ago when he wanted to take Brianna to England, and understandably so, because Brianna's her only child. But not only that, she's her only connection to Jamie. And while I don't accept that Claire wanting Bree to stay with her was necessarily because she thought it was in Bree's best interests, it seemed more like it was because it was what Claire needed. And as Sandy put it later on, Claire's kind of selfish. And the episode sort of toyed with that and made that sort of really come out. But I didn't feel like they actually paid that off properly, because it didn't feel like her letting go of Bree and actually going back, to Scotland and going back into the 18th century seemed like magnanimous. It seemed like it was just because Bree had finally turned around and gone, you know what, Mum, I love you, but I don't really need you that much anymore. You really need to go off and get a life. And I think at that point, that made Claire look like she might be a wee bit obsessive. And I don't really think that fits the character. I don't like not liking Claire. And she was all about finding Jamie and everything a few episodes ago in the end of season 2, and then suddenly they're just like, no, she isn't, and then they're like, no, 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 she can't bear to be separated for Brie for a minute because, and it's like, well, I don't like that aspect of it, and that might just be me. But can we also talk about Roger? I'm starting to think that Roger might actually be insane. I mean, what with his character doing weird things? I mean, what kind of guy crosses the Atlantic unannounced to force his way into another family's Christmas just so he can experience it? like a different culture's Christmas. I mean, I know he had other reasons. He wanted to rekindle things with Bree, and he had the pamphlet for Claire and everything. But he just came across as a bit odd and maybe a wee bit creepy. I mean, it could be because he's a little bit underwritten, and the focus tends to always be on Bree and Claire. But at this point, we don't really know much about him other than he's kind of a bit bookish and likes wearing cardigans. But anyway, that's been an awful lot to chew on this week, and I'm really glad that we're finally back with Claire and Jamie together in the past. And I feel like maybe this will make the show feel a bit more outlandery, because the last half of this season's been kind of a wee bit kitchen sink drama, but like somebody's channel hopping it with Poldark. Now, I really hope it's going to improve and just be back to the really good fun of seasons 1 and 2. So until next week, I've been Ian, and these have been my grumpy opinions.